Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Nomad CEO Podcast. I'm Kenz, your host, and today we have the honor of having Lisa Begley with us. She's also a podcast host of the Sock Drawer Podcast, which is amazing. And I'm so pumped to have her on because, man, Lisa has a unique perspective that most people you listen to do not have. Now, as I mentioned, she's a creator of the Sock Drawer Podcast. And she's author of the Sock Drawer Philosophy. Amazing book. You can get on Amazon. But she has more than 40 years of experience across 28 different roles. From COO to fitness entrepreneur to an international flight attendant. How fun. She's lived through reinvention, through burnout, rebuilding, and rising again. Now, her work is built around one belief: that everyone deserves clarity and a life that fits who they're becoming. Now, she loves meaningful conversations, practical insight, and helping people move forward one brave step at a time. Lisa, I'm so happy to have you here.
Oh
Welcome,
my
welcome.
gosh, Ken, thanks for that beautiful intro. You are
Yeah.
too kind. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, we have an author, a podcast host, a life coach, creator of the drawer method here. So you're a big deal. You're a big deal.
Thank you.
And
Yes, thank you.
yeah, of course. And I always like to share how I met someone, and how we met was actually virtually as well, which is so funny.
Yeah.
And it was at a past role, a workplace that we both were at. And you were helping with essentially the onboarding process. And I was extremely overwhelmed in that role, going in, drinking from a fire hose. And I'm a systems person. So to meet you and you're a systems person and you're like, just do this and do that and follow A, B, C, one, two, three. I was like, oh, hallelujah. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You're helping
Uh,
my brain. So from the beginning of meeting you, you've just added so much value. And that's why I'm so pumped to dive in today into things like the drawer method that I know is going to serve the listeners, because you have that teacher's heart and you've pulled that through your wisdom and your experience. So let's go ahead and dive in.
Let's do
uh,
it. Ken, thank you so much. I just want to say how grateful I am for our connection. God brings people in your life for a reason. I know there's a reason for you and I to be here today. So you are an amazing human being who has also done so many things. So I'm just grateful to be here and be a guest on your podcast. So thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. That means the world. Okay, I'm gonna cry. It's fine. It's so good.
We're supposed to do that at
Um,
the end.
I know. We'll do that
Yeah,
later.
right.
Okay. Suck it up, Buttercup. Okay, no. I'm so curious. I always
Mhm.
like to know people's like history, where they come from, and it is so fascinating. 28 different roles
Mm.
over 40 years. I said this to you before we started recording. You do not look like you could have 40 years of working
Oh,
experience.
oh gosh, thanks.
Like 20 at best, even that. Like you look so freaking good. Goals, just FYI. And so, to me, that's not even just like a career that you've had, but really a journey.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious, what would you say is the thread that ties all of that together for you?
You know, I, Ken, I think it's just my love of learning. It
Mm.
honestly is. I mean, maybe I'm not diagnosed in any way, shape, or form. Maybe it's ADHD, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. Maybe it's the fact that I was raised by two really strong women, my mother and my grandmother, and that independence, that level of confidence. They instilled in me a lack of fear. I have
Mm.
no fear when it comes to being able to jump and just set, I always, and it's always had the confidence to say, okay, I'm going to try this, and fail or no fail, I was never afraid to do it. And so
Mm.
I think that has just having that characteristic for myself instilled by my mom and grandma, I think that truly has been a benefit in my life, right? I probably attended college, three different colleges, three different times, took some courses, never graduated, never finished any of that. Mainly because I think life, happened and it was like you have to work and you have to do this. And I kept going back. I'll just tell you a quick story. So relationship wise, Trent and I got married at 19. Married for 18 years, had 3 kids, moved across country from Southern Cal to Syracuse. In 93, ended up in Lancaster, raised our kids there, and in 2000 divorced. And we divorced amicably. Everything was good. We were still friends. We were just like, we're done, right? High five. Okay, great. And
Mm.
so 16 years later, we stayed connected. We have what I call the show up factor. And I think that applies to my career path as well. Just show up and help others, right? And that's kind of been the theme. And then 16 years comes and goes. We've always stayed connected. We had a lot through that journey, grandkids born, kids got married. We had, some addiction concerns, things like that, that we had to navigate together. So it kept us connected. When you have kids, you're connected for life,
Mm.
but in a deeper way. And we were just always good friends. He's always been my best friend. And 16 years later, we remarried in 2017. So now bringing that family kind of full circle again. And the reason I say that is because of going back to what I was saying about having to show up, having to not be able to finish that college course or that year, and not get that degree. You have to do what you have to do. And I've always had that, you got to do what you got to do. So take the bull by the horns and get out there and find your next job. And I was never afraid to do that. So when we talked before, I went out, I literally had to list every job I've ever had from 1976, my first
Oh
job at 14
my gosh.
years old. I mean, 23. Let's see, it ended up being like, if you include my volunteer work and other things I've done, 30 roles over the years. And I love it. I used to
Oh, I
be
love it.
so embarrassed about that.
Mm.
It used to, because back in the day, you were a job hopper. That wasn't a welcomed thing when you were applying for jobs. And many times I had to overcome that in an interview. And it wasn't fun. And sometimes I got the job and sometimes I didn't because they were afraid 2 years I'd be gone again. They were probably right. Because the 18 months to 2 years seems to be my threshold, right? Where I go,
Mm.
I've got to do something else. Like I've capped out my learning, I've capped out my knowledge. I just
Mm.
can't do it anymore. Now there were a couple of jobs along those years where, I was let go as well. So it wasn't my choice, it was their choice for different reasons. And you just pivot and you
Mm.
go to the next thing. But it was never in the same industry, almost never. It was like, I'm gonna do something different.
Wow.
So it's a long
Wow.
answer to your
No,
question, but
I love
yeah,
it.
yeah,
Well, there's so much depth to your story, and I can imagine, the life of raising kids, getting married at 19.
mm,
Talk about that. Like that alone, and then married, I think you said 18 years, had 3 kids.
yeah,
Yeah, and then to go through a divorce, which is not a fun thing, and I can only imagine, yes, with kids and then grandkids and all the things, all the life stuff,
yeah,
to then just that true love to come full circle and for you to be married again, like that
yeah.
alone, I'm sure has so much. I mean, you could probably have
We can
layers
have a
and
whole
layers of wisdom.
podcast
No,
just on
I'm
that.
sure. I have so many questions on it as a divorced person myself, right? And
Yeah,
and with all due respect to my ex, that won't ever
yeah,
happen again. But to have that hope
yeah,
full circle for some people, I think is so beautiful because, the true
yeah,
love there. So, and I will say too, of the job factor behind you, if people are listening and not watching on, say, YouTube, do not conform to the pattern of this world is on a big sign behind you, which I love.
yeah.
One of my favorite scriptures.
That
So,
gives me goosebumps.
yeah, it's so good. And
Yeah,
and not to disrespect the power of being in a job long term and people that do that. But to that point, it sounds like you were honoring you and your growth and what
mhm.
you needed and who you are as a person versus just this container that you're told you quote unquote should be in for however long,
Yeah.
if that's fair to say.
I
And
think that's very fair to say. Yeah,
yeah, so I have a lot of respect for that. And
yeah.
a quick question on that too.
Hmm.
Just out of curiosity from like a practical sense, I know things have changed in our culture where it is, more normal to have a job every couple of years. But
Yeah.
in those interviews, when you had to overcome well, Lisa, let's look at your history here.
Hmm.
What did you say? How did you sell yourself, right? For
Yeah.
them to hire you when they did? Before we jump in, quick note. If you're enjoying the conversations we have here on Nomad CEO, you will love our World Changers weekly newsletter. This is where we share everything that doesn't always make it to the mic. Behind the scenes, on our masterminds, challenges, global retreats, and the movements we're supporting around the world. Plus, every Monday, we send out simple mindset and body tips that you can put into action immediately. If you want to change your world just a little more every single week, you can sign up for free at worldchangers.me/signup. That is worldchangers.me/signup. All right, let's get into today's episode.
So it's interesting that you asked that question because I never sell yourself, right? I guess I never went into an interview thinking I gotta sell myself. I just went into it being myself. So, when they would ask me, I was always very transparent, very honest, It was either because of life, transitions that something like, I was an international flight attendant. When you get a divorce and now you've got to be, there every other week for your kids, that is not an option. So that's what led me to the next thing, right? So it's been a life journey. So when they would ask me, I would say sometimes it was a choice and sometimes it wasn't, meaning, life gave me lemons and you had to make lemonade. So I had to pivot and do something that worked. My biggest focus in getting a job when my kids were young was always to accommodate their schedule. So that's where I drove a school bus for 4 years, right? Curtis was home. I had two kids in school. I worked third shift as an ER admitting clerk at the hospital in my town at the time. I worked 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. because my kids were sleeping and I knew I could get home, get them breakfast, get them off to school, and then lay down. So I always did jobs that would accommodate my kids' schedules. And so sometimes it was a choice. And I mean, it was always a choice, right? We always make that choice. But sometimes it was a necessary scheduling thing that needed to happen. So when they would ask me, I would just give them that literal feedback. And you like me, you don't. There's 10 more jobs out there. I'll go apply to those. And I don't mean that in a flippant sort of way.
Right.
I was, I guess, like I said, fearless and confident that I could do any job I wanted to do if somebody would just give me the opportunity. And I think that has built my reasoning for being, for offering free 30-minute sessions of just talking through clarity if someone's in the messy middle. That's what's led me to want to give back and help people to build that and to be able to do that as well so that they're doing what they love. If I didn't love it, and it took me a while to recognize this, but if I didn't love it, I couldn't stay long. I knew that, So that was the next pivot.
Yeah, that's really good. And I have a couple questions on that. I listen to podcasts all the time as well, which is funny. I'm committed to the podcast game one way or another, right?
Yeah.
But I can't remember which one it was on, but talking about the age-old advice of do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. And then there's other people that are like, don't do what you love. That's horrible advice. I think it's maybe this, depending on how you look at it, and that statement alone it's a very surface level, there could be depth to that we can unpack. So how do you view that advice of do what you love and what you're passionate about, and then you never have to work a day in your life, so to speak?
I think passion is a relative term in this question because when you're doing I love to do different things. That's what I love. It's not so much I love, and to your point earlier, respect to the people who go into a career and they love it and they're committed to it for 40, that's my husband, right? 43 years in the roofing industry, and now our boys are in that. And so to me, I have so much respect for him. Steady Eddie. He's the stable one. I'm the non-stable one, right? And that's okay, right?
Yeah.
We are a good fit. But I think having a passion and doing what you love doesn't just mean the actual job itself. It doesn't apply just to that. It applies to your inside, right? What's in your heart. So what I love is learning and growing and constantly absorbing new information. I've learned that about myself. So that equates to multiple jobs over time, multiple roles, because I could never ever have sat in the same industry, even though maybe I would climb the ladder and go through all these different levels and finally get to the top at some point. that was never necessarily my goal, but I would have been doing essentially the same thing for the same reasons. And for
Mm-hmm.
me, I think figuring out for anybody, figuring out you don't have to, when somebody says, figure out what you love and you don't work a day in your life, you go, oh, well, I just can't even think of anything right now. I love technology. I love, being an influencer. I love whatever it is, right? Content creating. I love graphic design. I love engineering. I love roofing, right? I love being a mechanic, whatever it is. If that is truly what you love, then it's a true statement. I'm not sure about saying don't do what you love, as long as you understand what it is, what that means to you, right? So doing what you love, it doesn't necessarily have to be a trade. It doesn't necessarily have to be a task or a specific industry. It's got to be what you personally yourself love. And that's what you have to figure out first before taking the leap and deciding what you want to do. Ideally. Now, some people don't have the luxury of doing that, right? You just got to
Yeah.
get out and get a job. You
Yeah.
got to go get a job. And
Right.
sometimes you take you take that, but if you go into it with the mindset of, I'm going to learn everything I can about this job, I'm going to be the best at this job, even though it's not where I want to be, or I don't see myself here in 5 years, I'm going to do everything I can to learn it and grow from it because there's not a job in the world, Ken's, that isn't going to provide you some level of skill set. If you looked at all of these jobs I've done, you could probably, out of 30 different roles, and that includes like volunteer work and things like that,
Mhm.
you could take those skills and you could narrow it down to a party of 10.
Mhm.
10 skills, probably 10 main skills that apply to everything I've ever done.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
That's good. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love what you said too. I mean, everything, especially the part of you love doing different things.
Yeah.
And you know that about yourself. And I relate a lot. I've had a lot of different jobs before I started working for myself. So,
Yes.
just part of the journey. But I love that because that's a self-awareness and your fearlessness and your confidence is like that's just who I am. Like you said, you show up to interviews. It's not about selling who you are. It's like you are already sold on who you are. So
Mhm.
you don't have to sell to them, so to speak, if that's fair to say, right? So
Yeah.
I'm curious as well, from your personal life and your marriage to your professional life, there's a lot of reinvention there. And I want to segue that into now what the philosophy that you came up with and all of that. But could you talk about a time that you walk us through what that reinvention of Lisa looked like? A
Oh
story that
gosh.
stands out. I'm sure there's so many.
So many.
But what is one time that you think, it maybe traces to what you developed in the drawer method the most?
Well, so the drawer method is a foundation of multiple people over time asking me, how have you done that over the years? And just to touch on that real quick, I had to sit back and think, and it took me a while to really come up with what were the steps that every time I wanted to pivot that I put into place. And so
Mm,
that's where the drawer method comes from. We can talk about that in a little bit. But back to your back to your question, there's been so many. I mean, my life is not, a bowl of
mm,
roses. It's just
mm,
not, and it hasn't been, but nobody's is, right?
mhm,
And I think that's as long as we recognize that, and there's that old, you're not walking in their shoes, and until you have, no judgment.
mhm.
And I
Yeah.
think there's been multiple times over the years, we went through a child with addiction. That took 12
Mhm,
years. That was definitely not only a growth period for me as a parent, but a learning curve, right? And then there was, being let go. When you're let go from a job, that is like the 5 steps of grief that you have to go through,
mm,
similar
yeah.
to a divorce or losing a loved one. And so that is a process that you go through. And I think when Trent and I divorced, I ended up remarrying in that 16 years for a little bit, and that ended up being a very volatile,
Mm,
not great relationship. So I learned a lot from that, right? And I don't let that drag me down. In the moment, I had 3 years of a breakdown,
Mm.
and there were like multiple things that happened. My mom died unexpectedly, and I found her. So that was a little bit of trauma. And then I was in the middle of this really tough divorce. And then I lost a pet in the most tragic way by jumping out of a car window and getting hit coming from. So those three things happened in a very small, short of time. And I pivoted. I mean, I pivoted, but I was drowning for about 3 years, right? So what it took is, first of all, God, right?
Mm.
I may not have been recognizing that in the moment at that time, but I look back now and I know that's what got me through all of that. I lost friends, I lost, a lot of self-respect, a lot of things because I was just circling the drain with alcohol and anger and so much anger. So between therapy, quitting drinking, and getting help, that
Mm.
got me out of that. So that was a pivot and that was a learning curve. And I look back on all these experiences and I could give you 100 more
Mm.
of things that have happened, right? But I look back on all of that and I know that everything I took from each one of those experiences helped me grow my faith deeper in the Lord, helped me grow my friendships, helped me grow my relationships, just closer to my kids, have this
Mm.
relationship with my grandkids that I am so grateful for. So I hope that answers your question, but that to
Mhm.
me is where, it's a gift to go through those
Mm.
things. Telling somebody who's in the messy middle and going through something, if someone had told me in the middle of that as I was circling the drain, that was a gift, I would have told them
Mm.
to F off, like
Yeah.
it would not have gone well. Yeah, you could take your gift and shove it.
Get out of here.
But you have to be in the right frame of mind and looking back now. And then there was the whole like closure of our studio, right? We had
Mm.
we invested in a franchise and did a fitness studio for a while, built it from the ground up, and
Wow.
3 years later had to close it. And that was really traumatizing for me. I
Mm.
mean, that was a process to go through. I had a lot of insecurity about that. I felt so much guilt and shame over
Mm.
that. My husband dove in with me, which he again, stable, not stable. And
Mm.
so that was a big big jump for him to do that. Never had done it
Mm.
before. And so, yeah, so it's just been one pivot after the next. And that's most people's lives.
Mm.
And how you address it and move on from it and then look back on it, to me, is what helps you continue moving forward.
Mm. Yeah. Wow. Lisa, you're incredible.
Oh,
You are incredible. I'm so,
no more than anyone else. I mean, everybody goes through these things.
yeah.
My story, our
Yeah.
stories are just different.
Right, right.
Uh,
Yeah, I love that because and I think you've given so much hope to people listening because of the variety of things that you've shared that you've gone through. The probability of someone going through at least one of those things is high.
yeah,
But nonetheless, even if it isn't the actual thing itself, the emotions that you feel and the whole process, right, that the human experience can
yeah,
bring, and now look at you, right? I mean, you're a massive success and not just successful in the world's eyes, but you also have a sense of significance and purpose about you that is divinely rooted. And you can tell, I can tell that you're walking out what you were designed to do. Like you are literally, you exude that light. And
uh,
so
you,
yeah, and I would love to actually ask on the drawer method, So you wrote this book on the
yeah,
sock drawer philosophy.
yeah,
And so drawer, DRAWER method,
yep. Mhm.
acronym of that. So would you mind sharing either like high level of what that is or a step of that just so people can understand a little bit about that and how they can apply it if they're feeling stuck or unclear?
Yeah, thanks. Sure. It came out of people asking me like, wow, like how do you do that? How do you go from this to this to this to this, real
Mm.
estate to a diner to a this to that.
Mm.
I mean, the things are shoe salesman. Like, come on. How do you jump from one thing to another? Like, if I read this list, you guys would crack up. I mean, it's crazy. But
I love
how do
it.
you do that? And I really had no idea. I had to
Mm.
really pinpoint and do some deep dive into my soul and just
Mm,
ask myself, like, what makes me do that or have the ability to do it? Or, why do I do it? And
mm,
when it all came down to it, of course I wanted to make it fun, right? I had just published the books of the Sock Drawer Philosophy, and it's all about letting go and finding meaning and all the things. And so I thought, well, I'll just use an acronym. So I put it together and it was like very first thing. And this is what got me started because the first thing you have to do is decide to do it.
mm,
That's the first step. Now, I could probably write a whole book on how to do that, right? Because
mm,
there's a whole process. It's not just like one day, not everybody has the ability to go, I'm just going to do it. I'm going to do
mhm,
that today. I mean, that could be
mhm,
your list of to do for the day,
mhm,
or it could be, and it all centers around, procrastination and all the different things, that people talk about out there that seem to be probably one of the biggest trends right now, right? I
mm,
hear ADHD, I hear procrastination, I hear, all of these different things that we're talking about, and it's a real thing. So to just say, decide to, it sounds flippant. It's not meant to
mhm,
be. You
mhm,
just have to figure out how to get there. So once you
mm,
decide to do something, then you have to remove what you have to recognize and remove what was holding you back because you
mm,
can't move forward if you don't get rid of that. So what
right.
was it? Was it insecurity? Was it imposter syndrome? Was it a person, a negative human in your life? Was it a family member telling you that's ridiculous, you shouldn't do that? Or, was it just was it money? Was it, location? Was it a relationship? Whatever it was, you have to realize what it was and find a way to remove it from your path
Mm,
of moving forward and then apply it. Apply what you know. Application is everything.
mm,
And again, a whole book on that. You have to realize what you bring to the table. And that's one thing I didn't know for a long time. I
mm,
didn't think I had anything to give, anything to bring to the table. I didn't know how I could help others. That's what I
mm,
wanted to do because I feel like I've overcome a lot. But then I was like, I don't know if this is really a lot. And then as I start to rattle it on, like I just did with you a few minutes ago, I'm like, wow. And
mm,
not that, I mean, there's so many people out there, please hear me say this, that have gone through and been through far worse things.
mm,
What I can say is I'm blessed is I have not had a lot of health issues.
mm.
You know, I
Yeah.
mean, I have been blessed with good health. So
Mm,
many people aren't. So
mm,
all of that to say you have to apply what it is you bring to the table, right? Seek in your heart. What is it? And then really you just have to finally do it, whatever it
mm,
is. I call it wing it. Just got to wing it. You got to get out there
yeah.
and take the risk, take the leap,
Mm,
and then step back, evaluate it, kind of like decide, what went well, what didn't go well, all right, what's working, what's not working, because
mm,
that's how you narrow it down, right? Is to be able to like take the steps that you have done, good for
mm,
you, amazing, and then say, but what isn't working? What do I love about it? What do I not love about it? Do the evaluation, and once you do that, rinse and repeat. Keep doing it
mm,
you know? So, I mean, it's a simple acronym, but, the each one, it's not easy. I'm not saying
mm,
this is just a simple, like,
mm,
it's not like a Mel Robbins 5 4 3 2 1 blast off to
mm,
it. It's a little bit more involved, but it's a
mhm,
process that I think if everybody would take the steps to go through,
mm,
would love it. So if you're out there wandering in the middle, you're in a messy middle right now yourself, and you're just trying to decide, I know I want to do this, but I can't figure out how to decide to do it,
mm,
or I see it within reach, but I can't quite get there. Let's
mm,
figure out. Let's remove what's holding you back, right? Let's start there. So,
mm. That's
a
so
quick,
good.
yeah,
So good.
yeah, thanks.
Oh my gosh, Lisa, you are incredible. I could talk to you for literal hours. And we have talked for
Yeah,
hours at this
we
point.
have done
Yeah,
that.
we have. We'll continue
Yeah,
to. But I'm so, because I mean, the drawer method, wow, that alone, I mean, it brought more clarity for me, and I'm all about clarity. And it's just the simple, it's a simple process. And to your point, it does take that time to sit down and do that soul work and to look
yeah,
inward. But I think sometimes that can scare people because they don't know where to start.
yeah,
And so the fact that you've outlined, hey, you start with deciding,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
yeah.
and the build up to that too of just as you said, you can write a whole book on it, but I love that. I love that so
Mm.
much. It's
Thanks.
it's amazing. And I have a quick question. Where
I hope
did
it
the
helps
sock
people.
drawer name, like how did that philosophy itself, like for a
Oh
sock
yeah.
drawer, how did that come to be?
Oh gosh. Chat GPT. Here's why. So I remember when I was wanting to write the book, I knew what I wanted to write about. I knew, but I knew I wanted to talk about letting go and then
Mm,
finding the meaning in being able to let go, right? Because
mm,
that's huge, right? And then moving forward, what does that take, right? That takes baby steps to move forward. The drawer method is what's going to help you move forward. But you have to go, what is it that I'm hanging on to that's preventing me from deciding to do what I want to do? There's so much. So I had all this in my head. I just didn't know how to, the culmination of it, like put it into words. But I also knew I didn't want it to be heavy. I didn't want it to be another self-help book. And
mm,
I plugged all of this in to chat and I said, give me 20
mm,
possible titles for my book.
mm.
And I would have never occurred to me. Never. And it's
Yeah.
funny, again, just a divine intervention here because as soon as I read it, I'm reading 20. You know how it lists you out
Mm,
for you. I'm
mhm,
reading 20 and nothing's grabbing me until I see the sock
mm.
drawer philosophy. So then I got to dig in, right? I'm like, okay, if I like these three, and of course, it was a process to narrow it
Yeah.
down. I was like, what? I don't get it. But then the more and more I dug, and then I looked up, philosophy and the sock drawer and saw, is there anything else out there like this? No.
Mm,
Okay. What is, and it is a philosophy book. It's not
mhm,
really like, and there's some quotes in there and there's, obviously some research that was done and all of that. So that's all in there, but it really is kind of a philosophy of like
mm,
how to let go, how to move forward,
mm.
how to take those steps. And so that is the honest, answer is it. I
Yeah.
was so grateful for it. And now it's become my brand, right? The
Mm,
Sock Drawer podcast, the
mhm,
Sock Drawer philosophy, next
mm,
book, the drawer method, and all the
mm,
things that can help people with a lot of resources. And there's some resources on the Sock Drawer podcast website for people as well that they can go
mm.
grab. So yeah, that's
Yeah,
where
that
I've
I
been.
love that. And I love the honest, quite frankly, chat
Thanks,
is a
Kat.
helpful, yeah, thanks. I call it Chatty G,
Yeah.
like thanks for the help, right? It's a
Yeah.
resource, right?
Thanks
Just,
for the guide. Yeah.
yeah, I love it.
It
That's
is
so thank
such
you
a
for being just
resource.
real.
Yeah.
So on
Yeah,
that note, you
I
mentioned,
loved it so much and it spoke to me and I was like, yes, this is it,
mm,
So,
so good. Those
yeah.
moments when you know,
Yeah.
that's huge. I love
Yeah.
that. So to that note, you mentioned the website. Could you share where people can connect with you and dive deeper into your podcast and this book and the book
Yeah.
to come and where they can find all that
Yeah,
and you?
the sockdrawerpodcast.com. There's a
Mm,
lot of links in there. There's some free resources. You can definitely get on my booking link and set up a 30-minute chat. I would
mm,
love to anybody who's experiencing the messy middle, who just feels kind of lost and not available. I would love to get on and just chat through it. Sometimes we just need a shoulder, a support
mm,
person, and sometimes it's better to do it with somebody who is not family, who is not a spouse, who is not a partner, who is not, in the middle of your life and knows you. It's to have that outside perspective sometimes is helpful. So that's all I want to do is be able to give you kind of some guidance and just listen. Sometimes all we need is someone to just hear it, you know, to
yeah.
literally see them and hear
Mm,
them. I want to see you. I want to hear you. That's all I ever wanted in my own life. And I want to give that back and pay it forward. So you can find all of that on that website. If you've gone through the messy middle and come out successful on the other side, or even still working at what your idea of success is, because everybody's is different, you can also apply to be a guest on our podcast, which Ken's
mm.
was. So I
Yeah,
loved it.
I know, so
Yeah, you can
fun.
find it on YouTube, our episode, right?
Yes, yes. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'd
and
highly
Apple.
recommend.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're a great host. That was so fun. That was so fun.
It
Yeah.
was fun. This has been fun. I appreciate your
Aw.
good questions, make you think.
Absolutely. And on that note, I do have a few more. So these are just
Oh,
fun
let's go.
questions, yes, that I ask at the end of every episode, every guest, and just off the cuff, like what comes to mind, and we'll go from there. So, first question is, your favorite travel destination, but also why?
Oh my gosh. Wiesbaden, Germany was the best experience from abroad that I had
Mm.
ever had. It was the most, or probably is, I haven't been there in years, obviously, the most beautiful. I was so blessed to be an international flight attendant for a couple of years, and it was just, it gave me so much perspective and so much appreciation for our country. But also, it was just amazing to see other people's cultures and be immersed in that for a few days at a time. And Wiesbaden, Germany was, I felt like it was in this little, like if you've ever been to Solvang in California, like this little community, just little, German community. It was so cute. Loved it. Loved
I
it.
love, oh, I gotta go.
Yeah. Oh, you gotta go.
I
I
gotta go.
highly recommend it. I mean, I loved Paris. I love every place I've ever been. Hawaii, I mean, Yellowstone,
Mm,
all of it.
yeah.
Boston, Plymouth. I, there's so
Mm.
many places. I've been so blessed to be able to travel.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. And I hear you. It's almost an impossible question to answer, and people have been multiple places, you know?
Yeah.
So, but I think the one that stands out that you're emotional, like that
Yeah.
speaks to your soul first is so cool.
Yeah. Bucket list,
Okay.
Ireland. That's
Ooh,
bucket list
yes,
is
good
I've never
one.
been. So yeah. Go ahead. Sorry,
Yeah.
didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
you're good. I love it. I love it. We could talk travel all day.
I know.
Um, okay, what are one of your favorite books that you've read that have impacted your life, or podcasts that you listen to? Either one.
So Brene Brown was my most impact. I've read all her books, so I can't really pick
Mm-hmm.
just one.
Mm-hmm.
But quite on, they're probably sitting right back here. That was a pivotal moment for me. Somebody, a good friend of mine said, and I was struggling, and a good friend of mine said, you gotta watch her TED Talk, right? That 20
Mm-hmm.
minute claim to fame TED Talk that she gave that when she was, a professor and just nobody knew who she was. If you watch that, whoo, good.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Mm-hmm.
just lit a fire in me that I have never put out. And I'm so grateful to her. Brene Brown, thank you, But it was transformational. Watching that and then reading her books it was just a pivot. And you know what it did is it made me feel normal. It made
Mm-hmm.
me feel seen and heard. It made me feel like this is okay. This isn't, I'm not crazy. There's not something wrong with me. Like a lot of times, trying to figure out why, squirrel, shiny object syndrome, you have this, you have the ADHD, you have this, maybe you have that. I'm like, I don't have nothing. I'm good. This is who I am. And I'm okay with that. And it made me reach that conclusion, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt a lot of guilt and shame around all of those years of pivoting, if you will, right? And transitioning but it made me resilient and I'm forever grateful to
Oh,
her
so
talk.
good. That's so good. Yeah, that is one of the best. I need to go back and rewatch it because it's been a while.
It's
It's so good.
motivational.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like her, she does, and I don't know if I can quote it, Ken's right off the top of my head, but she has that Theodore Roosevelt quote, right?
Yeah, staring greatly.
Quote. I have
Mm.
that hanging on my wall, and
Oh,
I look at it every day.
so
If you're
good.
not in there getting beat
Hmm.
up with me, I get you got
Yes.
I got no ears for you. No ears for you, buddy. You know, I
Oh
don't
my
want to hear
gosh.
nothing you have to say.
Yeah.
Probably
Oh,
not
so
grammatically
good.
correct. I don't want to hear anything you have to say. You crack my own
I want to hear
grammar
nothing.
there.
No.
You're like, what's happening right now? I know she's watching over me, but
I
good
know.
grief. Yeah.
But that's so good. And I just to add, like that quote, I'm so glad you say that. That has probably been like that and the Our Deepest Fear quote, I think
Yeah.
have been in my entrepreneurial journey, the ones I've had to come back to time and time again. Because
Yeah.
when you go out or just anything that's maybe not normal, right? And people,
Yeah.
they'll throw tomatoes and I don't know. I'm a very sensitive person.
Mhm.
Words matter to me. It's one of my love
Mhm.
languages. Some people say something hurtful and they may not even mean it. It's like, so thank you because it's always a good reminder. And I think anyone listening, like find something like that quote, Daring Greatly,
Yeah.
that, you can lean on when you're pursuing something on your heart.
Yeah.
And I think it's that other quote of sometimes you have to risk everything for a vision that no one can see but you.
Yeah.
So, anyways, I just get so fired up by your share.
No, it's
Thank you.
true. I mean,
Yeah.
I think this is a great question. So thanks for asking it because it makes me think back.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just have a couple more. So this one's a fun one. And it's a two-parter. So either way, whatever's easy to answer.
Okay.
Uh, either if you have a favorite dad joke, or if you can think of the last time that you laughed so hard you cried.
John Christ. He's my favorite comedian. Sometimes
Oh,
I just listen to him in the car. He cracks me up, right? And he's
oh,
another great story, right? I mean, he has a comeback story,
mm,
and I would love to interview him. John Christ, if you're
mm.
listening, I would love for him to be a guest, not just to, I mean, because I think Sadie Robinson Huff, he
Mm,
was on her podcast and talked about that. But he just makes me laugh. One, he laughs at himself, which is
mm.
awesome, right? But he's just my favorite comedian. He just cracks me up. So
Oh,
that when I will put him on a full episode of him from YouTube in the car when I'm driving and I'm just rolling down the highway laughing. I mean, hysterically. He just cracks
oh,
me
I
up.
love that.
So
I
yeah,
love
so I
that.
highly recommend him to anybody.
Okay, I'll have to listen to
Put
him
him
more. I've
on.
been on a
John
Matt
Chris.
Rife kick, so okay,
Yeah.
that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, last one's a little bit different energy behind the question, but I'm setting the stage here. And the stage that I'm setting is the world-changing stage.
Mm,
So if you imagine that you have the entire world listening to you, and you're behind the podium, you have the microphone, and you can share your message, your world-changing speech to impact as many lives listening as possible. What would you say?
love yourself first. That would be it. Learn how to love yourself first because nobody's coming for you. Nobody's coming to help you do that. We're not all fortunate to have a little mini cheerleader over here, always giving us motivation, always giving us the positive, always providing that. Love yourself first and learn to love yourself first is what I should say, because it's not always easy.
Mm,
It's a tough thing to do. How to do that is different for everybody. I don't believe there's one path that everybody
mm,
or 10 steps that everybody can follow to love yourself. I don't agree
mm,
with that. It is a journey. I don't think we're all born loving ourselves, but we weren't all born not loving ourselves either.
mm,
So what's happened to you throughout your childhood in your life that maybe has caused you to, generate this negative self-talk, you
mm,
know, that you have going on, or make you fearful to do something you really want to do, to take the leap, or
mm,
not go for that job, or not go for that trip, or not, whatever it is, what's holding you back could just simply be, and I say simply, but could just be that you haven't found a way to love yourself enough to be able to do it. So let's find that way.
Wow. Lisa, that was amazing.
Well,
So good. That
yeah,
I felt that to my core. Thank you.
you're welcome. Thanks for the great question.
Yeah, you were incredible.
Oh,
Much love always to you. You're a
yeah.
beautiful world changer. And thank you so much for your time
So
today.
are you. Absolutely. It's been my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Yes, awesome. Everyone, check out the notes, connect with Lisa. You will not regret it. Okay. She is a woman that you want to have in your life. You want her podcast in your ear and her book in your eyeballs. Okay. She is the best. So, thank you so much, truly, Lisa, for your time. I value it tremendously and hope you all have a great day as you're listening to this. So much love. Bye bye.